you so much, Ami-Louise. I will now do my best to follow such a wonderful sound. Um, my name's Charles Stern, and I run Workshop Stern, which is based in Stockholm. I'm talking to you now from my studio in Södermalm. As Alexander said, we do a variety of things here. We produce sort of collaborative design projects, education, research into craft techniques, lecturing. I'm a glassblower by sort of parentage. My family is, we have 2 or 3 glassblowers in our family, and it's really glass and ceramics that I work with most at the moment. I guess the common theme in the studio's output is how digital media influences traditional ways of making things. I'm also fascinated by the sort of resonance that ancient materials and ancient methods of making have for contemporary making. So much of the work involves the impact of computers on skill sets and concrete craft techniques, as it were. But it also looks at the more diffuse question of how digital culture and behavior can impact craft and design. And a couple of the projects I'm going to show today will hopefully illustrate this for you. But first, to show you something of my sort of day-to-day process, I can show a short film that was produced by the National Museum in Stockholm for their recent renovation that was finished in 2018, I believe. So this shows my studio in Sussex, actually, in Lewes, in Sussex. It's basically, this is my kind of day-to-day process, which is a sort of ceramic 3D printing, which works with entirely normal clay, but using sort of rather simple robotics. It looks obviously very sort of 3-dimensional and physical, but it has a very strong sort of graphic element. It's very much to do with building up through layers, and so it requires an understanding of geometry and pattern making. These are some of the objects that we made for the museum. One of the limitations of this method, which is a very sort of invigorating limitation I found, is that you need to be able to create patterns which are a continuous loop or a sort of closed circuit, as it were. So you are producing sort of closed, repetitive patterns, which are very, which have a sort of obvious link back to pre-modern skills. And so a lot of the processes that that we use involve researching tiling, textiles, geometries, which are usually sort of associated with the Middle East. And we're going to talk about a few of those projects in a second. The first project, there'll be 2 projects, and the first one is to do with actually reimagining objects that were destroyed during a rather horrendous museum fire at the National Museum in Rio, in Brazil, in 2018. Fortunately, most of the collection was actually digitally scanned before the fire. And the project goes about recreating these objects with this preserved information. And the second uses second project I'm going to talk about uses a rare 14th century pattern which appears in a Bible, the Fahi Bible, as a basis for a sort of contemporary installation and an exhibition that's going to be shown in Värmland. But before we go there, I think we are due to go for some more music from Johan Löfving. So I will hand over to him right now.
Hello. Hello. So nice to join you, and hope the technology works so you can hear us nicely. We have some quite unusual instruments that we thought we should present before we present the pieces. This is a Theorbo. I don't know if you can see all of it in in the camera, but it's about as tall as me actually. It's a type of bass lute which was developed in Italy towards the end of the 16th century. So around the time of the opera, when that was all a new art form, they figured out how to make a bigger lute with a few more extra notes. And yeah, they ended up with this extreme looking instrument.
And I have what we call a Baroque flute here. You can put it closer to the camera, as you can see. That is four sections of wooden flute with one key. And here is a Baroque Piccolo. So it's kind of says a flute from the 18th century. So it's kind of something between the flute and the recorder. So it has a very, very gentle sound. So it has a D major scale, it sounds like this. And the construction that makes the flute has a very different sound when you do a kind of scale outside the D major. So composer back in 18th century like Bach, Telemann and even Roman, when they choose a key for a piece they write, they will choose already what kind of sounds they want to have on the flute.
Yeah. We're going to play more folk songs. It was folk dances earlier, now it's some folk songs. One is from Sweden, Att Värmeland du sköna, which is especially nice for me, of course, since I am from Värmland. Then we are going to play two Scottish folk songs, which was actually arranged and sold in the 18th century by a Italian musician who spent lots of time in Scotland collecting folk songs and earning lots of money selling them.
Thank you so much to you both. That was amazing. I will now show you a few slides from this ongoing project called Quarter Past. What you're seeing here is a page from the Fahy Bible. It's a 14th century Bible, which is in the Sassoon collection. Sassoon was a sort of bibliophile who amassed a huge collection of Muslim and Jewish religious texts. And this particular page shows a map of the walls of Jericho. The project has been gone through a sort of an analysis of this pattern and adapted it to the process that you saw earlier, ceramic 3D printing. You can see what we've done is a sort of tracing of this kind of labyrinth. After this sort of this pattern was sort of understood or sort of assimilated really, we brought in another designer, and in this case we are working with my studio colleague Matti Klenau, a really well-established interior designer in Stockholm. And so he's taken the pattern directions really that existed from the Fahy Bible and adapted them to his own sort of form language. Following that, we devised a method of printing these pieces, which follow this closed circuit, but in a very complicated way, and printing them in stoneware. And these are some of the maquettes that we are making at the moment. The idea is to create a sort of tiling system which can be used for floor and walls. So the pieces are printed out in very sort of soft, very wet clay. It's about the sort of consistency of cream cheese. It then dries and shrinks and gets fired to give it this kind of lush red color. And we are experimenting with different forms and different patterns. And as sort of nearly all of my projects go, we kind of establish a working method and then bring in a collaborator quite quickly who can share the sort of aesthetic responsibilities. But I prefer to work that way, and it also some of the complexities of the processes sort of necessitate that. And I quite like to work with techniques which are outside of my own sort of skill set. So these are the models. You might be able to catch a glimpse of some of them in the background when I turn the screen back on. But here's a little scale model of an exhibition that Matti will have in Värmlands Museum in January. And these pieces will form this wall installation and a sort of tableau. So that's that project, and that will become 1/4 of a 4-part project where each one involves a sort of an analysis of an ancient object, and it's sort of extrapolating a pattern or a process from that object, and then applying that to a sort of contemporary digital fabrication method. So that's where we are with that at the moment. I'm going to now hand you back to the musicians, and we'll come back afterwards for one more project. Many thanks.
In this section, I will be playing the viola, which is this one. It's a bit bigger than a violin, so please enjoy. So that was Milhaud. The last piece we're gonna play tonight for you is a piece by Gustavus and Faurè, and it's his Berceuse. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again, Ami-Louise. So the last project I'm going to show you today is called the Atlas of Lost Finds. So in 2018, there was a horrendous fire at the National Museum in Rio, and something like 20 million artifacts were destroyed. But interestingly, the department had a very forward-thinking digital laboratory, which had scanned quite a large number of the objects in the museum. And these scans have now become the basis of this project, It's been initiated by a design studio in Belgium, some colleagues of mine who I've worked with before, and they've put together a sort of a coalition of anthropologists, ceramicists, designers, historians, to focus on particular objects from the collection and to create a kind of research cluster, but not just focusing on sort of historical narratives, but also hands-on research through making. The first case study is something called the Fidelio stirrup vessel. This is a traditional Peruvian object which dates back from somewhere between the 11th and the 15th century. This is a picture of it before the fire. The piece actually survived the fire, but was entirely lost its glaze, and but did manage to stay in one piece. The piece is a sort of a water vessel, and they appear within the culture as domestic objects, but also ceremonial. The cat-like creature is perhaps a jaguar, and was seen to have symbolic importance for the culture. Now, the object and how it was made is the focus of the study, or particularly for me. And here you can see a digital file that dates from the pre-fire scanning of it. So this is the kind of material that we were given to work with, as it were. The project is basically showing, it has gone out to a number of different sort of people with different skill sets. But the fact that we have a sort of digital file means that we can all recreate within the same material an object. So this is printed on my printer here using the ceramic method. And it gives quite a faithful kind of way to actually have a physical sense of this object. And from then on, we are kind of negotiating backward and forward and debating how these objects would have been fired, how they would have been glazed, what they were for, and so on. And I'm personally using the project as a way to bring in a whole new set of skills and technologies to our studio here in Stockholm. The first of which will be a way of firing these objects without a kiln, but by actually creating a wood bonfire and insulating the unfired clay, placing it in the bonfire and firing it slowly over 12 hours or so. And that will create a kind of glaze which will mimic the original. But what interests me most about this way of working is the fact that you can create a sort of distributed body of knowledge, which can give us tools as designers. So one of the recent costs, if you like, for my studio has been an electric kiln to fire all of those ceramics, which I showed you earlier. But through this project, we're going to go back through history and explore ways of firing objects which are much cheaper, much more labor intensive, but have a much more deeper authenticity or a different kind of story to them. So that is kind of really what I'm trying to explain about our adoption of digital methods. It isn't really just technical, but it's also exploiting the distributive nature of the internet, and how that we can get into dialogue with academics from all sorts of fields without having to travel and without having to create, obtain funding for a particular project. So it's really exciting and it's really fascinating. And the results of this will be a huge, well, huge, there's going to be 50 or 60 different people submitting objects that are interpretations of the Fidelio cat vase in all kinds of their own aesthetics. And that will be brought together, and then it will travel to different exhibition halls, I think the Milan next year. Fingers crossed that it's going to be on and running normally, but if it is, then this little cat will be there in some shape or form. I think we are going to finish up now and have some, is it questions next, or perhaps some more music? I'll thank you very much and hand you back over.
We thought it was quite nice, since it's Gustavus Adolphus Day, that we had all these instruments from around his time. Actually, we also want to take this opportunity to thank the Anglo-Swedish Society for the support we received back in 2 years ago, when we did a project about another Swedish king, Gustav III.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for tonight.
Thank you very much for having us.
No, don't go away. There might be some questions for you too.
No problem.
Oh yeah, I will
Thank
just
you.
mute myself.
Yes. That was splendid, and we managed it. We managed to have a talk and a concert. So I'm going to throw the floor up and see if anyone wants to kick off and ask the first question. Lou would like to ask the first question.
Oh, Elizabeth also raised her hand. Right.
We'll go with Elizabeth next.
Okay. No, thank you for the music. And it was such a beautiful journey, take my mind out of this room. I've been sitting here for 7 months now. But thank you also, Charlie, very much for sharing with us your fascinating projects with museums and people from the other fields, and incorporate the modern technology with such ancient material and making method. I was totally, yeah, I, as a ceramist myself, I know how difficult it is to handle clay as one of the most used material, one of the oldest material as well in the world. And so I asked, because myself also was one of the scholars 12 years ago, and you were 10 years ago. And after came to England, in London, I because of the scholarship I received, and later I discovered a whole new industry of bespoke tableware and so on. And I'm still working in this field. And what this scholarship has brought me was a life-changing event. And I wonder, when you were in London for that 3 months time in London, what kind of influence did you receive, or what kind of impact did it give? Anything, your personal experience?
Yeah, it was absolutely critical, actually, because I got to spend time with a particular department at the Royal College of Art, which was sort of leading a kind of interactive approach to materials. It was it was 2 floors up above the ceramics and glass department. It was interaction design, and it enabled me to literally go downstairs, work with glass, and then go upstairs and do 3D rendering and programming, and make contacts in that area. And so this ended up being a project that was shown in Småland in Sweden, where we remodeled objects from the Orrefors and Costa Boda collections, and created sort of kinetic films where they design classics from their catalogue, sort of morphed and changed and appeared to be continuing to be blown or to be molded. And this required like a level of expertise that I just didn't have, and it didn't really exist in Sweden. So the chance to spend a whole 3 months, surrounded by such sort of skilled professionals was really the best thing about it. And since then, I've kind of gone off in that direction ever since. So it's an approach which isn't really linked to any particular material, but it is about combining, as you say, like design classics and sort of archetypes with the possibilities of digital media.
Yeah, I actually myself learned also the 3D modeling in.
Yeah, it's very, it's such a powerful tool in all product design areas, right?
Yes, yes. Also at Royal College of Art in London, that's where I learned this technology, and it's fascinating. It's a totally new world opened up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good. I think it's a good complement there for the RCA and for Konstfack, because the RCA, because of the amount of people that are going through there, they do have a sort of better digital culture. Whereas Konstfack is so strong in the actual physical handcrafts, and their workshops are so good. So, I think it's something that the society could sort of exploit as well. The other disciplines which are available at the RCA are something to be taken advantage of, and it's not just about the ceramics and glass department.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you, the Anglo-Swedish Society.
Indeed. Thank you very, very much.
Well, you both contributed greatly, and it's wonderful to see the two of you go on to be such strong creators. Elisabeth has a question.
I have, first of all, just wanted to express my gratitude to Charles and all the musicians. It's been a lovely, lovely evening. Thank you. And for Johan, I have a question. How does one travel with particularly that first instrument you played on? I can't imagine how you put it in a taxi or whatever.
Well, I mean, that's one of the good things with the whole lockdown, I suppose, because we haven't been able to go to many places. So that's been the yeah, it's quite a challenge actually. I'm having a new instrument built for me by Lars Jönsson in Stockholm at the moment, and that one will be a folding Theorbo, which means that it will be able to not take up much more space than an ordinary guitar case. I'm not sure exactly how they do it, but yeah. So when I carry this one around, obviously it's
you have to book a seat, right?
yes, one has to try to book a seat on flights and avoid taxis and try to sort of walk slowly into the trains, and yeah, plan.
They always have a problem because it blocks the oxygen of
Yeah.
the person, oxygen mass of the person behind.
Yeah, the
So
flights
they're
are
not
very
very happy about it.
no. So yeah, that's a good question. I suppose one could say that when they developed these instruments, they would never ever imagine that one day we would have to fly around in the air and fit into a tiny airplane.
No, indeed, indeed. Thank you so much, Johan, and
Thank you, Elizabeth.
everybody. Thank you.
I have a question, Charles. You have a studio in Sussex and one in Stockholm on Södermalm. How do you divide your time?
Well, I'm afraid there hasn't been much dividing this year. We've been in Stockholm the whole time. But yeah, prior to that, I was actually going over sort of a couple of times a month. So because I'm also managing my father's glassblowing business, which was in Battersea for 40 years. But we've moved to Furness now. But we do sort of work with sort of more traditional lamps and vases, and that happens in London. But since for the whole of this year, I've been in Stockholm, which is a very surreal experience considering we have no lockdown here, and you know, most of my family and friends are you know in experiencing what you guys are at the moment. So it's been quite odd, but I guess I am grateful that things are a bit easier here, and I can go to work and you know be in the studio. But no, we're hoping to get over. But it's been a year since I was in England, so I'm missing it very greatly.
Do you have contact with the Royal College of Art still, or anyone at?
Yeah, I do. I work with some of the teachers there, and occasionally we go back and lecture. But I haven't really kept up recently. But I believe that the workshops are open, and but it must be greatly reduced.
I can confirm that the studios are actually open, and I was in them yesterday.
Oh well,
Richard works for
fantastic!
the RCA.
As I actually work for the RCA.
Oh, you do? Brilliant! Oh, okay. What do you do there?
I'm the head of space planning, so I manage all the college's estate, and working very closely at the moment with the architects for the new building that's going up in Battersea.
I have a question, Ami-Louise. Are you at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama now? This
Yes.
One of the studios at the school. Am I right?
You're completely right. I'm in school, and it's still open as usual. Almost. We have most lessons online, but practical things like chamber music and one-to-one lessons we still have in school.
And what's the mood? Are people feeling optimistic and upbeat and motivated, or is it a little less than it was a year ago?
Oh, I think people are very happy it's still open at all, to be honest, because last year was, it's hard time for musicians when lockdown, because everything, all the business closes and you have no concerts, nothing to look forward to. So I think it was a very dark time for students as well as musicians. But now I think most people are very happy to be back this term, having something to look forward to again.
So this is it. We need to raise a glass in honor of the Anglo-Swedish Society and on Gustavus Adolphus Day. Skål!
Skål!